Joining us now is journalist William Hurwitz, former head of communications for USAID missions in Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Kenya. I guess just we want to start there, William, with the deaths prevented by USAID from 2001 to 2021. This is according to The Lancet. 25 million from HIV and AIDS, 11 million from diarrheal diseases, 8 million from malaria, 5 million from tuberculosis, 92 million deaths prevented total in 133 countries in 20 years. Talk about what it means for the United States to pull out completely, it seems, from helping the rest of the world, countries that we have extracted from often, dealing with the kinds of things that they're dealing with and what we're talking about here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. I mean, honestly, the report from The Lancet is not surprising. It aligns with what every major humanitarian organization is warning, that gutting American aid is going to cost millions of lives. From my own personal experience in East Africa, that could not be more clear. Even just to give a few examples, in Kenya, I saw children receive American-funded HIV medications. In Ethiopia, I saw families in disaster zones whose lives were saved by food grown on American farms. When you take away life-saving medicines, when you take away emergency food, you should, of course, expect death.
You know, William, Eugene mentioned how Secretary Rubio talked about the, quote, government-sanctioned inefficiency. In the New York Times on Wednesday, New York Times columnist Nick Kristof wrote about, and this is the headline, millions of vaccine doses go to waste in West Africa. He writes, I went to a warehouse behind a fence and I found millions of doses of medicines that had been donated to Sierra Leone. They are gathering dust and some of them are approaching their expiration date and may have to be destroyed because the Trump administration canceled the program to distribute them. And I raise that because the big mantra out of this administration is we're going after waste, fraud, and abuse. But what does it mean when it is this actual administration that is contributing clearly here to the waste?
I mean, what you just shared is tragic. It is worth remembering that Secretary Rubio himself has publicly praised American aid many times in the past, including after seeing it with his own eyes. But I really do think that the deeper issue is this. Secretary Rubio is able to get away with these claims partially because we, inside USAID, failed. We failed to loudly and repeatedly tell our fellow Americans about the millions of lives their tax dollars were regularly saving. I believe that that was our biggest failure, and it's what has created the space for these fairly heartless falsehoods and accusations, including the ones you stated from Secretary Rubio.
Yeah, everyone should read that. That's on the New York Times. I worked at USAID for over 8 years. This is our biggest failure from Sunday, June 29th. You know, when I was talking to USAID officials when all of this first started, when DOGE first started going after them, one told me, and I'll never forget it, this is the richest man in the world going after the poorest people in the world and making it worse. And I wonder what you think, and in the conversations you had with other people who worked for USAID in the past, what it says to the rest of the world that the United States is pulling back. Who will fill that vacuum?
Yeah, I mean, I think first it's quite important to just state what we're pulling back from. I'd like to give just one example that I saw personally, one story that I wish every American knew. So between 2020 and 2023, a historic drought swept across Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia. These are 3 countries in East Africa. This was the longest drought recorded in any 3 of these countries, and it put 40 million people on the path to humanitarian aid by the time it ended. I mean, we're talking about a disaster of biblical proportions. And although it barely registered in American public life, Americans stepped up. Taxpayers provided 70% of the aid needed to keep people from dying. We're talking about the absolute basics here. USAID provided emergency food. This includes wheat and peas grown on American farms. We provided clean drinking water, medicines for malnourished children, shelter for fleeing families. That's what Americans paid for. The most expensive year, which was 2022, that aid cost about $2 billion. That comes to about $6 out of your tax bill for the average American household. So I really do think that it is fair for viewers at home to ask, what did they get for those $6? But they got a lot. Independent experts that I spoke with said that American aid alone prevented between 2.1 and 3.9 million deaths for just that drought. And half of those we would expect to be children, newborns and children 5 years and younger. Your $6 was an absolute bargain. It was a moral bargain. And I believe that had we done a better job telling Americans about this, this would have been a story of national pride. And with many stories like this, it would have been much, much harder to eliminate USAID.
This is a terrible situation, but William Hurkowitz, thank you, one, for the piece you wrote in the New York Times, and two, especially for your service, not just for your country, but for the world.